Good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Irwin, Head of Education at the Ulrich, and we have once again reached the end of the academic year. And we have the opportunity to celebrate the scholarship of the graduates of the School of Art and Design and Creative Industries Master of Fine Arts program. But before we get started, I'd like to invite you all to visit the Ulrich's all-new suite of summer exhibitions opening this Thursday, May 20th at 11 a.m. Both exhibitions highlight works from our permanent collection. Art is a Superpower, curated by our exhibition designer, James Porter, brings together new acquisitions over the past 5 years, and it is an absolute must-see. On Vacation, curated by our curator, Ksenia Gershine, features portfolios of works by Alexander Calder, Carol Appel, John Bader, George Gross, Vitaly Komar, and Alexander Mellenbeed, Robert Mata, and Harry Sternberg. We are very excited to be able to have Vitaly Komar join us for an artist talk via Zoom from his home in New York City on Tuesday, June 1st at 6 p.m. And one of our newest acquisition artists, Ayana V. Jackson, will join us via Zoom on Tuesday, June 15th at 6 p.m. And to close out our Ulrich virtual season, Tuesday, July 6th, also at 6 p.m., we will be joined by Jay Williams, curator and author of John Bader's A Road Well Taken. Registration is free and easy by going to the programs page on the Ulrich website. And next week, we have an all-new series of outdoor sculpture tours in partnership with the Central Plains Area Agency on Aging, celebrating communities of strength during Older Americans Month. So each day, Monday through Saturday, May 24th through the 29th at 11 a.m., we will have guided tours of the 81-piece sculpture collection. We do ask that you make a reservation by calling the museum at 978-3664 or by emailing ulrich@wichita.edu. And there are fabulous goodie bags for everyone too. This morning, we are featuring ADCI MFA graduate Lily Guillen. And to introduce Lily, please welcome Associate Professor of Photo Media, Jennifer Ray. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hello. First of all, I'm going to correct your pronunciation.
Oh,
then Lily maybe can correct mine. Lily Guillen.
Guillen, thank you. I apologize. I apologize, Lily.
So it's really, truly my pleasure to introduce Lily. She's as Jana mentioned, she's a graduating MFA student, and it's just been an absolutely extraordinary experience getting to work with her. She has made work that has challenged me sort of in every way possible, and in all the good ways, in all the ways that you hope that students challenge us. She's been making really innovative use of photographic materials. She's printing on various kinds of fabrics and then hand working them, which is, it's not unheard of in the photo world, but it's really, it's not a particularly common way of making work. And I think Lily will find out as she sort of ventures out from grad school how remarkable it is that she's really invented her own vocabulary. While she has been a grad student, she's had more than 24 exhibitions, which is also quite remarkable for a grad student. It's not the kind of thing that many of our students accomplish, including several solo exhibitions in Wichita, at Cadman Gallery, Positive Directions, and of course, her recent thesis exhibition at Clayton Staples Gallery. She's been awarded a residency at Brashnar Creative in Macedonia, which hopefully she's going to be able to actually do this spring. It was awarded last year. She's been included in the Salina Biennial and New Visions 2020 at the Texas Photographic Society. She's presented her work at the Midwest Society for Photographic Education Conference, which is quite a big deal as a grad student. And well, the one last thing I'll mention is it really tickled me in her studio to see a map of the U.S. and her checking off all the states where she had exhibitions. And I think that sort of drive is going to serve her very well as she leaves grad school and enters the real world, we'll say. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Lily.
Hello. Sorry, I was getting kind of emotional when Jared was talking. So I'll try to get back. Okay. Hello, everyone. As Jennifer Ray said, or I don't think she said, but I'll just start by introducing myself a little bit as well. I was born in Morelia, Mexico. So my parents immigrated to the US when I was only 2 years old. And so growing up, I had two sort of cultures that I had to grow up with and deal with and learn from. I had, my Mexican culture that has a lot of machismo kind of fit into it. Machismo is just basically male chauvinism in English. And then I also had to navigate the American world that is so different and, just sort of navigating these two different cultures, one that I had at home and then one that I had at school and outside of home. So with the machista tendencies that we had in our house, there were also a lot of abusive tendencies that kind of stemmed from those machista ideas. And a lot of it also, I realized that a lot of it also came from my Catholic upbringing and the teachings of our Catholic Church, which I grew up very strictly Catholic. So my work explores the ways in which religion has enabled domestic violence and sexual violence in women. This is explored through two different media. I use embroidery and photography. I began using embroidery because of its connotation with repair, and so I really wanted to use art as a way to heal and reject the ideas that I grew up with. Both of these media are also the best to work with because in art history, they also have this sort of they have been marginalized in some way. They weren't really considered high art in their beginning, which I think is relevant to my work. So fiber art was not really considered high art when it was in its beginning because it was mostly done by women in their homes. So there's this idea that if embroidery had been dominated by men, like drawing or painting, it probably would have been considered high art right away. But since it wasn't, it has this connotation of like domesticity and women's work. So I wanted to sort of reclaim that, but also push its boundaries away from what we typically think of when we think of embroidery. Similar with photography, it also had trouble making its way to the fine art world in its beginning. And painters used to just discount it as an art because it was faster than painting. And so some of them just used photographs as reference points for their paintings. So with my work, I want to challenge traditional notions of art while also elevating these media and the materials that I'm using and pushing their boundaries. So I have used a lot of materials that can be considered cheap or kitschy, but I've been able to elevate them and transform them in a similar way that I have been, just a simple person who has been transformed through this use of art and rejecting of ideas. So each of these pieces in this body of work challenge the rectangle or square format in some way. And by this, I mean like the traditional way that we see art in galleries, which is like art on a canvas or a drawing on a piece of paper that's that's like a rectangle. And so this kind of became a symbol for the patriarchy in my work, really. And it's been able to show I've been able to show my journey being liberated from these sexist ideas by moving away from this traditional square rectangle format that we usually see. And in doing this, I'm able to allow the pieces to move and flow and hang as they can, as they need to. Fabric doesn't stay still like a piece of wood, like a wood panel. It moves if there's a little bit of wind. It wrinkles, and those are all things that I really love about working with fabric. All of the women that I have photographed are ordinary women who I know, who have had similar experiences in their lives. I wanted the viewers to, even if they don't recognize that particular person, to think of someone else in their lives who could have possibly been subjected to this. And I also tend to fragment and abstract the bodies in order to show how traumatic memory is fragmented and distorted through experiences. Sometimes when you're experiencing trauma, there's a bit of memory loss or distortion where we don't necessarily remember things exactly as they happened. Oops, sorry. So I would like to begin talking about this body of work by talking about Eva y el conocimiento. So this piece was based on the story of Eve, and for those of you who are not familiar with Christianity or the story of Eve, basically Adam and Eve were the first, were said to be the first people on Earth, and God gave them a set of rules, and one of them was not to eat of not to eat from the tree of the forbidden fruit. And the forbidden fruit was like the knowledge of good and evil. So Eve ate of it anyway, and she offered it to Adam, who also accepted, but Eve was the only one that's blamed for the fall of man. And actually, when I was little, I read the story of Eve, or I knew about it, and I also villainized Eve, and I blamed her for all the bad things that happened in the world, and I wish that it hadn't happened. But after doing some research and reading some feminist theology, I came to a different interpretation of Eve, and actually felt like I could relate to her in a way. In the same way that that she was told of not to eat of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. I was also discouraged growing up from going to college because I was told that I would be presented with a lot of new ideas that would make me question my faith, which is exactly what ended up happening. And but it's a path I chose to take, and a path that I'm still questioning. But I wanted to show the two figures parallel to each other because I wanted to show the literal parallel that I see between Eve and I, and the sort of new connection that I feel with her. In this piece, the figures are still constrained within the rectangle format. So this piece was still mounted as fabric mounted on stretchers, because this is kind of where I started my journey. Really, it's I still felt a little bit constrained within the Catholic ideas that I still had a lot of boundaries that I wasn't ready to cross. But the middle part of the piece where you see the gold, that part is actually elevated, and I wish I had a better detail shot put in this presentation to show that, because the rouges that are happening there are actually a little elevated from the piece itself, as well as the cheeks in the figures. They're filled with polyfill. So it's like they want to start coming off the canvas, but they're not quite there. So again, the same way that Eve acted independently in deciding to take the forbidden fruit, I also decided to take the knowledge of a world outside of abuse, toxicity, and sexism. That was something that was in a way forbidden for me as well. So this piece is to reclaim knowledge. After this, I began to start seeing other parallels between other women in the Bible and experiences that women still have today and that I've had in my own personal life as well. En Glamorosa hasta su último suspiro, I used Jezebel's story as basis to talk about how powerful women tend to be seen as villains. Again, for those of you who are not familiar with Jezebel's story, she was a very powerful queen, and she was also very faithful to her husband, which is a little, which is why I don't understand why she has this sort of connotation of being a whore. But basically, you know, she got stuff done, and people listened to her, and so that was seen as a threat. So this kind of reminds me of like how in today's society, if a woman has some sort of authority, she's seen as, you know, the B word or a threat or just a feminist, which is something that, you know, I've been told, just kind of brushed off or villainized in a way. So I wanted to give Jezebel a different memorial to how she is typically seen, which is as a bad woman. Or in a book I read, what a woman should not be. And I think women should be powerful. So I wanted to show her in her typical glamorous self, but I didn't want her to look necessarily pretty. She looks like she's screaming. She looks like she's going through something, but that she won't go down without a fight. And the way that this piece is displayed, she tends to tower over the viewers, and she takes up a lot of space. So this is the space that she is reclaiming. The next piece that was inspired by the Bible was La Mujer Sin Nombre, which means, it translates to the unnamed woman. So in the Bible, I noticed that there are a lot of women who were just referred to without names. So like women in the street, women by the well, women, mother, sister, daughter of so-and-so. And so this was really, I took this to heart. It was really sort of problematic for me because I feel like we still see this in like media today. Like if a woman is murdered or kidnapped or, you know, disappeared, she's like, oh, people will say like, they will write, you know, she was the mother of so-and-so, the daughter of something. And so I feel like they deserve to be remembered as more than just like how they relate to other people, specifically men, because usually, you know, even when you introduce someone, sometimes when I've seen people introduce people, they'll be like, oh, it's so-and-so's wife, not even saying their name. So I just wanted this to be a monument to women, mostly who will never be found or who are seen as anonymous. And I used 4 different layers of fabric to symbolize the different layers of someone's personality. So like their dreams, their goals, their passions, and not having them just be being seen as a literary device to get some other story across. So the viewer is invited to get to know this unnamed woman by walking all around the piece, getting to see all the stitches, getting to see how it converges at the front and how it kind of dissipates the more you move between the layers. But there's also gaps between them to kind of leave gaps for privacy and for you know, things that someone wouldn't necessarily share. So this piece reclaims space as well. Which brings me to Ni Virgen ni Puta, Solo Mujer. So this image was based on the image, very famous image of La Virgen de Guadalupe, Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I used this because the Virgin has been used as an example of what a woman should be, which is quiet, obedient, pretty, silent, yeah, all those things, motherly, non-sexual. And even if the Rican is a really big sort of cultural icon, even for Mexicans who don't follow Catholicism necessarily, you'll see this being tattooed on people's bodies. You'll see it resignified in a cutesy way to put on backpacks and everything. So it's just become a really cultural icon. And you might have seen it in murals from Wichita, which I've also seen. So it's a very, very important figure and icon. And so it was a little scary to work on this piece, actually, to be honest. But it ended up being super important to me because, again, I feel like she deserves more than to just be remembered as a side character, as the mother of Jesus, because she was her own person. So I was thinking about her desires, her aspirations. And so I opened one of her eyes because in the original image, her eyes are closed, so she can begin to see. And I opened her mouth so she can begin to speak because in the original image, her mouth is also closed and she's with her eyes closed looking down. And I also constructed a breast and a vagina out of, the rest was constructed out of the forehead and the nose of the model because she wasn't comfortable with nudity. And then the vagina is just oversized lips. Because I wanted to really get to the idea that being a sexual being is not something to be ashamed of. It's natural, and it's something that I've been struggling with all my life, and that I feel that I finally got into a place where I can accept myself the way I am and not be ashamed. Which is why this piece is so important to me, because it's reimagining what a woman should be versus what a woman is and should, or what some women are, really, not to generalize. But it's a very important piece to me because of that reason. The opening of the mouth is mirrored in this next piece titled Tengo autoridad, no me quedaré callada, which is Spanish for I have authority, I will not be silent. And this piece was inspired by a quote in the Bible written by Timothy, Timothy 2:12. He literally wrote in the Bible, I permit no woman to teach or have authority over a man, she is to keep silent. So obviously this this quote really struck a chord in me and really made me a little riled up. So I wanted to make a piece that showed anger, which is why I used red. And the lips are blue because it just means that I'm no longer going to be quiet until till the rest of my life. So when someone loses oxygen, their lips tend to turn blue. So it's just kind of this reference to that. So the text is pouring out of the mouth. So that's what's written in the fabric. And it just is repeated over and over again. So the piece is still constrained in a way within the square format that I talked about earlier, but that's just because this piece was inspired by a quote in the Bible that's trying to keep women constrained. However, the fabric that's pouring out overpowers the stretchers, and also the tulle that becomes sort of invisible when you see it from afar, and that's what's holding the piece onto the stretchers. So those just kind of become secondary. The fabric is really what is most captivating and should be more focused on. So this piece reclaims authority and the ability to speak your mind without the fear of being punished. In a similar way, Morelia Feminicida also uses text. So this is a very large piece. It's over, It's almost about or over 8 feet wide. So this piece uses the text to curse the government, the Catholic Church, and machismo. So the photographs I used for this piece were documented from protests that happened in 2020 in Morelia, Mexico, where I was born. So in 2020, there were a lot of protests that emerged, specifically after the death of Jessica, which is a name that appears a lot in the writings of the actual walls, and then also it appears a couple times within this piece. She was a 21-year-old woman who disappeared for 3 days and was found mutilated outside of the city limits, and her boyfriend had actually murdered her. So this struck a chord in a lot of feminist activists and a lot of women who even who don't consider themselves activists, because they're just fed up. The Mexican government doesn't really care. And they also curse the Catholic Church for covering up a lot of sexual abuse. And so I visited Mexico in December of 2020, so last December, and I was really surprised to see the writings still there. And so I decided to document them. And as I was documenting them, I didn't know I was going to make anything with those pictures, but I'm really glad I did. And so this piece is really big because I wanted it to resemble the walls in which the writings were made. But I also left spaces, gaps between each panel, or between some of the panels, for the stories who won't get to be told, who won't get to be known by the media, who won't even, for women who will never get to be found as well. So I wanted to keep those for those stories, and this will also always have this unfinished quality to it for the same reason. This piece reclaims autonomy and condemns anything other than that. This final piece I also appropriated real life photos for this final piece, which is titled El fin del ciclo, which translates to the end of the cycle. This final piece shows a timeline of my family. It's over 30 feet wide, with very small photos that have all been taken from old photos. It begins with my grandparents when they were younger till when they were married, to my parents when they were children to when they were married, to my siblings and I when we were children, and up until today. And all of the faces are covered up with the way that you can see on the bottom picture. This is to really make the viewer question who is a perpetrator, who is a survivor, or if they're both or neither. And I really just wanted to make a point that this can happen to anyone, and it's happened to a lot of people. So having a wide range of family photos, I felt could give people a way to relate to them and to see themselves in a way within the photos. But in the long cycle of abuse, the end of the piece droops down. So it shows that it is possible to break the cycle, and that it is important to do so. This piece shows that you can reclaim a healthy lifestyle outside of all the abuse, toxicity, and sexism, and which is something that I'm doing. And so it's kind of the end of the cycle, the title of the piece. But I really wanted to make a statement with all of the photos that have remained in a straight line, and how up until the end, it's when it droops down. It's really about making a statement of how long this is going on and how it needs to stop somewhere. And so with this piece, I also feel like I'm ready to transition into the next sort of phase of this work, which is to help others tell their stories in the future. I feel that I've been able to take the time to reflect, heal, in some ways from my own personal experience, that I would like to help others in that same way, using a similar format with art, because I am a strong believer that art can help heal. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming to the talk, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Lily. I wish we had a couple of questions in the chat box. One asking if your thesis show is still up for public view, and do you want to go ahead and talk to that while I let everybody in for the Q&A?
Yeah. Should I stop sharing or should I leave it up?
Either way.
Okay. So my thesis show actually closed last Friday. It was open for about 3 weeks, but I did make a video documentation of the exhibition. I will post it in the chat box in case anyone would like to see it. But I do have a show scheduled at the Kansas Wesleyan University in Salina, Kansas in October, where I will be showing a lot of the same work, if anyone is interested. But I don't have specific dates yet, but you can kind of just keep that on your radar. Let me put that in the chat box.
Yeah, that would be great. For all of you watching, I'm again slowly going through our list of attendees and giving you permission to turn on your cameras and your mics so that you can talk with Lily directly, for everyone who has questions or wants to learn more. Lily, I'm curious, what are your plans now? What's next?
So at the moment, I'm currently looking for jobs, and I've applied to a couple of residencies, one in Denver that I really want for next year, but I should be hearing soon. My plan is, to have, I really wanted to go full time with my wedding photography company, but since I'm moving, it's going to be a little hard to do that while trying to build a new sort of client base. So I might have to work a regular job for a while. But I do want to, that's still a goal of mine, because I feel like that way I'll be able to take time off that I need to for residencies. Just to take some time to make art, just not something I want to lose. I'm still constantly applying to any show that I see that could be a good fit for me. So that's just kind of what I'm thinking at the moment. I'm just kind of winging it. Yeah.
Well, it's exciting, and we'll be following, you and keeping up to date. Hi, Don.
Hello.
How are you? Hi, Lydia.
Doing good. Got a question for Lily, in that the pieces you created and then you photographed, which do you consider the most important part of your art? Is it the object itself, or is it the photography that you do of the art?
Well, so the photos I showed today are just, and I feel like I might not be interpreting the question correctly, but so stop me if I didn't. But the documentation I showed today is just, images that I can show. The actual pieces are what are important. So I did mention I use photography, but the photography side of it is when I photograph the women, and then I print the photos on fabric, and then that's how I'm able to sew them on and sort of, distort their bodies. Yeah, does that make sense? So the actual art piece is the more important thing. Yeah.
And by the way, I knew how to pronounce your name because I have a friend named Lily Guillen.
Oh, yay.
Fantastic guitar player out of Kansas City, and she's going to be playing at the Orpheum Friday in support of Jenny Wood, one of our local artists here. and we get this presentation up on our up on our YouTube page soon. I would show it with Jenny Wood because she is of Hispanic descent as well, and she has a message of hope that she would like to bring to people that I think resonates in your work as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll have to look her up.
yeah, Katie Guillen. Katie and
Okay.
the Drive is the name of her band, and she's just an awesome blues guitarist and really fantastic. So,
Cool.
I had a question. I was wondering if while you've been making this work about, you know, the Catholic Church, have you received any retaliation from people either in the church or from the church? And if so, how did you deal with that?
So far, the only people that I know of that have been really offended, specifically by the virgin piece, were my parents and one of my sisters. But I felt like I was still able to have a decent conversation with them, although it got a little heated at some point. But I'm glad that I was still able to have that space and, like, you know, talk about why it was important to me, even though for a couple of them it didn't really change their minds. So I'm welcome. I welcome any people who want to have those discussions. And I did meet someone who is also Catholic. Who I actually ran into her while she was looking at my show. And she said that she was initially very shocked to see it. She was just like, you know, like stunned. But that she wanted to learn more, which is kind of the more like, it's like the typical reaction I've gotten from other Catholics. So yeah, but I haven't gotten anything from the church or anything to, you know, art is art. I'm not the first one to do something so controversial.
If anyone who hasn't turned on their camera would prefer not to, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box and we'll share them with Lily.
Lily, I have a question.
Yes.
So what advice do you have for somebody, a young person or old person or medium person who's trying to figure out their relationship with religion and is maybe struggling with that?
I don't know. I feel like I think the biggest thing I can say is that it is okay to ask questions. And sorry, I just realized my mom is in here, so I feel really emotional. Sorry. It's okay to ask questions because I feel like ever since I could think, I've always had questions about things that didn't make sense to me about in the church, and it was always sort of just brushed off, you know. If they could explain it, they would come up with some excuse. If they couldn't explain it, they would just say, oh, God is mysterious, we're not meant to know. And so I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was actually talking to Lydia when I was thinking about this. That, like, those questions were always there, but now that I've been outside of that, I've been able to really embrace those questions and not be afraid to ask them. And I think that's where it starts. And I think that's all I can really say, because it's a different journey for everyone. So yeah, I think that's what I would suggest.
Jim Farley has a question for you, Lily. He says, interesting combination of photography and fiber art using the photos printed on fabric. And he wonders, has your artistic process helped you move on from your personal experience of abuse?
I would say that it's definitely helped me heal. I don't think that I have completely moved on from certain experiences, because I think those are things that you just never really move on from. but it has definitely made me a lot healthier mentally. Just having the outlet of being able to just sew for 8+ hours a day, which is probably one of the only things I'm going to miss about grad school, is being able to just dedicate so much time to making art. But I feel like it definitely has. And that's why I want to be able to share that with other people, you know, even beginning with even my siblings or people in my family who haven't had the same sort of privileges that I've had to sort of work through these experiences.
Well, oh, excuse me. Jim says good for you. Ruth?
Yeah, not good light, but I just want to say how inspirational I found this presentation and the art, and sorry that I didn't get to see it in person. Lily, you are strong and you are brave, and I see you doing wonderful things. So that's my words.
Thank you. Thank you. So
Yes. Now to get this screen off.
Oh, no, don't go. Don't go. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Lily. And I agree with Ruth Ann 100%. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, where your work goes and everything that you're moving towards now.
Thank you. Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, it's
I don't know the future, so we'll see.
You have a future. It's excellent work.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so happy that you could share all of it with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It was really nice to be able to share about it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Jennifer, as well. There you go. And to everyone, we will see you soon. And register for the outdoor sculpture talks and come see the new exhibitions on Thursday or after Thursday, anytime, starting Thursday. We'd love to see you. All right. Thank you, Lily, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Lydia. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Have a great
everybody.
day.
Bye-bye.